Hello everyone! I am Alice of KHR Arts and Cloud Orchid Publishing, and today we are going to talk about some more tips for working conventions as an author. These tips are born out of some personal experiences I have had in the past few years of working at conventions as an author, specifically having a booth at a convention and selling my books at that booth. I have a few other videos that detail how exactly to research conventions, how to apply, and the ins and outs of being a vendor at a convention. This is kind of an addition to those videos. And these are the tips that I'm giving y'all so that y'all don't have to make the same mistakes that I did. The first tip that I'm going to give y'all is you should absolutely have designated reusable utensils with you at the convention, meaning eating utensils like knife, fork, and spoon sort of situation that you can take with you. I have a fun story for y'all. At a recent convention that I did, this particular convention, I was by myself, and because of the logistics of the convention, there just was not really any sort of other option for me besides having food delivered to me via an app. There were no places nearby for me to be able to reasonably go and get food at, especially because I was by myself. I didn't have anybody to watch the booth, and there was not a green room to go to grab food or snacks. And while yes, I did bring some snacks with me, because this convention was a 3-day convention and the dealer room hours were much longer than most conventions I have attended. So we're talking from 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. at night straight in the dealer's hall. That's a long day. And you need proper food to eat, not just snacks, if you're going to be there for a full 11, 12 hours. So I had to get food delivered. And unfortunately, one of the times that I got my food delivered, they didn't give me any utensils for me to eat my food with. And specifically, it was a poke bowl, which is a bowl of rice and fish and other fixings. So essentially something that is impossible to eat with your hands. And while yes, it's not physically impossible for me to eat it with my hands, I could be a total barbarian and do that. It's not recommended when you are sitting at a booth, trying to interact with people, not looking like a crazy person eating rice with your hands, as well as the logistics of how gross and sticky that's going to be, and touching products and touching money and just all of that was not going to work. So I had to go on a magical adventure of then ordering a small item from another place and specifically requesting that they give me silverware so that I could then eat my food. It was just the dumbest thing ever, y'all. It was so dumb. That was a lesson that I learned at that particular convention this year, is make sure in packing your necessities for the convention, do pack some reusable silverware that you can take with you, or even disposable silverware. If you do that, you just have to make sure that you pack your disposable silverware for every convention that you do. I just personally think it's easier to have the reusable silverware so that you can just pack it and you always have it. Obviously wash it, because otherwise that's gross, but I digress. That is a new tip that I personally learned so that y'all don't have to make the same mistake that I did. Have some eating utensils that you can bring with you to conventions in case, with whether you're getting food delivered or you brought food for yourself or you're expecting to eat food in the green room. It is a disaster to have food and no way to eat it. The next tip that I have for y'all is pop-up banners. Now, pop-up banners are exactly what they sound like. They are these either fabric or vinyl signs that pop up out of these little metal stands. You've probably seen other vendors have them at conventions. They are a really great tool to use to be able to advertise, to establish your brand, and most importantly, be visible. Signage is very important at conventions, and having something like a pop-up banner is a great way to add to your signage, as well as it also adds height to your booth, which adds more visibility. It's something that you can see from across a room, and you can advertise whatever you want on it. It can be something very general about just you as an author and your general genre that you write, or it could be something as specific as advertising your latest book release. I personally just designed a pop-up banner for the release of Succumb to Darkness that I will be taking with me to my conventions later this year. It's a good idea to create this kind of signage because it's portable, it's highly visible, and most places that you can get them from, they're 100% customizable. I personally use Vistaprint, but there are a lot of other signage resources that you can essentially do the same thing with. The next tip that I have in the line of signage is QR codes. As I've talked about in the past, I have recently printed business cards that have a QR code on them that takes you directly to my author website. It is very handy these days to use QR codes to be able to take people directly to whatever link or platform that you want them to go to rather than having to list out a URL. And more people are more and more relying on QR codes for this very thing. Another way that you can utilize QR codes and make it easier for customers to interact with your products is by having QR codes. So a good example of this is some authors will have sold out signs. So if you're at a really big event or you're at a small event and you just are off the rails and your booth is hot and things are selling out, it's great that you still have the ability to be able to sell to your customers even if you no longer have the physical product, is be able to have that signage that you can put out that says, oh, this book is sold out, but you can buy it online here, so that they can still technically buy it at the convention even if you can't hand them the physical product. It's also a great way for them if they are the type where they like to shop in person and then do their own online shopping later, is if you have the QR codes for them to be able to go directly to your website or wherever it is you're selling the book so that they can check it out and compare prices there. Last but not least, if there's any sort of other information that you want to share with your customers and fans at your booth, a really easy way to do that is to create signage that has QR codes. An example of that I use is that I have a QR code that allows people to be able to see the tabletop RPG guides that I write. It's a completely separate genre from what I'm usually selling and doing at conventions, as well as I don't have physical copies of these guides because they are digital only works. But having that sign means that people can explore that other part of my work without having to ask a lot of questions, without having to write down a website address, and just without a lot of hassle. They can just scan the QR code and away they go. So I highly recommend utilizing QR codes with your signage, with your business cards, with any other information that you want to present. It's going to make things a lot easier and a lot smoother for your customers. The last item on my list for this tips and tricks for conventions is extension cords. Electricity is typically a big deal at conventions, and in a lot of convention applications, they'll ask you if your booth requires electricity or not. And a lot of conventions also have rules about electricity. However, regardless of those two facts, it is frequent that at conventions, if your booth is placed in front of a wall as opposed to being in the middle of the room or in front of a faux wall, one of the fold-away walls that a lot of those banquet halls have in order to make the space bigger or smaller, if you're by an actual wall, chances are they sometimes have outlets on them. And a really great way to be able to take advantage of that is if you bring with you an extension cord. And I'm not talking about those really big, long extension cords that allow you to plug something in from 20 feet away, because that is definitely against the rules at most conventions. So don't do that because you're likely to get in trouble. I'm talking about the strip extension cords where it enables you to plug in multiple things into the same cord, and they usually only have about like 1 or 2 feet of reach. Why is this such a great tip? If you are seated next to an outlet by a wall, it's a really great way to be able to utilize that resource not just for yourself, but for your booth neighbors in your vicinity, specifically cell phone charging. That is a big deal at conventions, to be able to have that little extra free electricity resource for potentially charging your phone, as well as just being a good neighbor and allowing your neighbors to charge their phones on the strip as well. Because going from only 2 outlet holes to utilize to suddenly 6 outlets to utilize makes a big difference for everyone in that vicinity at the convention. So I highly recommend that. It's also really great if you're relying on an app like Square on your phone to be able to take credit cards. Of course, because there is absolutely no guarantee that you're going to have access to an outlet, especially if you didn't sign up saying, I specifically need electricity at my booth. Of course, you want to make sure that you have other options, such as I carry with me several juice bar chargers. They're those little rechargeable battery cell chargers that you can use to be able to charge any sort of USB device. You want to make sure that you invest in those because it is hard to find electrical outlets at conventions, so chances are you're not going to have any access to them, and once you're in the convention hall, you get what you get and you don't get upset. But on the chance you are seated next to one, be good to yourself and be good to your neighbors with a strip extension cord. Those are the new convention tips that I have for y'all. Some great lessons learned on my behalf, as well as some new tips that I have discovered along the way and wanted to share with y'all. I hope y'all liked this video. If you did, please be sure to give it a like, and if you're new, subscribe. All right, y'all, thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.